The National Security Agency puts out the top 10 tips for cybersecurity? I thought that's what they did, was hack other people, or at least other governments. Maybe they ought to be listened to. I'm Woody Huffines. I own the Nurse to Go in McKinney in Frisco, Texas, and this is Tech for the Untechnical. The National Security Agency, the NSA or no such agency, super secret squirrel decoder ring computer guys, what they have done traditionally is to go out and hack other governments or other entities and learn about cybersecurity and do super secret squirrel decoder ring stuff to hack other people. So when they come out with the top 10 tips to stay secure from a cybersecurity standpoint, perhaps we should listen. The NSA is now working with this CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Administration. I always feel like I'm redundant when I say that. And they are working to help us secure the infrastructure of the United States to make sure that we don't get hacked or we don't have cybersecurity issues. So when they come out with a list of the top 10 things that you should be concerned about with cybersecurity, I think it's worth giving a listen to. I'm not generally, as my friends know, crazy about the government putting out mandates, but the ideas that they have are pretty good ones, and here they are. The top 10 tips for the NSA. The first one is update or upgrade your software and operating systems immediately. Now that is important. The immediately is the really key thing here. Every Tuesday, or the first Tuesday of each month, for example, is called Patch Tuesday. And all the operating system people, Windows, will put out a Windows update. And that Windows update will have security updates that they push out so that you can fix cybersecurity holes in your system. And the reason that it's important to update those immediately is because when they put a patch out, that patch goes out to all the computers in the world. The bad guys can see what that vulnerability is because they can look at the patch and they can see the code and they go, okay, they're fixing this hole. Which means on Wednesday, every bad guy in the world knows exactly how to get into your Windows computer through that particular security issue. And that's why you should be updating your computer immediately. And it's especially true of operating systems. We have clients that have, the auto places, for example, and they'll have an alignment machine that's still running Windows 7. Yikes! Windows 7 has been out of support for over 2 years, which means Windows or Microsoft is not patching security vulnerabilities in Windows 7 and haven't for 2 years. So upgrade your operating system and upgrade all the applications as soon as security updates come out. Now, of late, when people usually put their computers on automatic update, Windows will push out updates for service enhancements. Not so much. That tend to break computers. So it's important that you go through and look and see what the updates are. Take the cybersecurity updates, and maybe the features updates can wait to a later date. Our business clients, we manage their updates so that we don't push an update that's not a security update immediately until we've had some time to kind of check out to see whether it's going to make it so that their computer won't print or their camera won't work on their laptop, which has happened a lot. So update your software and your operating system immediately. Number 2, defend privileges and accounts. The administrator privileges on your computer allow you to install software and to do things at a higher privilege level in accessing the operating system. It's always a good idea to segregate a separate account on your computer for admin and have an account that has admin privileges and then an account that doesn't have admin privileges, and then run on a day-to-day basis on the unprivileged account, so that the sign-in that you've used on the computer will keep people from installing software, and that's what malware does, is it installs software. If you don't have access or privileges or the rights according to the operating system to install software, and you click on the wrong thing and it tries to install software, you'll get a pop-up where you have to put the admin password in, which is a clue that maybe it's installing something you don't want. And if you're not running on the admin account or the privileged account, it would install automatically and you wouldn't know that you had a problem until you had a problem. Third is to enforce signed certificate policies for software. Anytime a software is put out, whoever makes the software, like Microsoft, digitally signs the software so that you can verify that that software comes from Microsoft. And most modern operating systems, in the Windows environment especially, they have signatures, and they check those signatures to make sure that the software has been signed. So anytime that you get a pop-up, from an admin perspective, if you're running on the non-privileged account and you get a pop-up and it says that there's a problem with the certificate or there's a problem with the signing, you really don't want to install that software, because the bad guys usually don't have a digital signature from a signature, or I'm sorry, from a certificate authority on their software. So make sure that, if you've got Windows, you're in pretty good shape, because Windows enforces that by default. But don't install unsigned software. If there's not a certificate on the software that's been verified, don't install it. Good clue. Fourth is exercise a recovery plan. Now here the key word is exercise a recovery plan. Not a day goes by that we don't get someone that brings in an external drive that has gone bad, and they have data on that external drive that's critical to them, whether it's pictures of grandkids or their business or their client files or something else. And they were thinking that they had a backup. Well, you don't have a backup. You do not have a recovery plan if you haven't exercised that recovery plan and tested it. An untested backup is no backup at all. An untested recovery plan is no recovery plan at all. This is particularly important for businesses. In your home environment, it may not be as important to exercise that backup plan as it is for a business, because a business is shut down for 3 or 4 days. There's a significant risk. If you can't get to the pictures of your grandkids in time to put out the Christmas card, it's sad. It's not a tragedy. So if you have a recovery plan, first of all, have one, and then second, exercise it or test it to make sure that it works. Next, actively manage configurations of systems. And I say actively because that requires you to do something. Look through the installed applications on your computer. Are all the applications there that you use? Are there applications there that you no longer use? It's kind of embarrassing. I have 3 weeks ago, I tested a piece of software, and I thought I had taken it off the computer, and I didn't. And then I was subsequently testing a new firewall appliance. And when I was testing the firewall appliance, there was a whole bunch of activity on my network that was unanticipated. Didn't understand why one of the computers was generating a lot of pings on my network. Now, it wasn't enough to impact performance, but it was enough that when I looked at the logs and went back and started managing the configuration and testing that firewall, I found out I had a problem. So, look for applications on your computer that you don't use and get them off. Make sure the applications that you have on your computer are ones that you use, and make sure, rule number 1, that those applications are updated, and updated immediately. Number 6 is continuously hunt for network intrusions. Now, there are a whole list of things, and we'll do another video on that, of the things that you can do or the things that you can pay attention to that tells you if you have an intrusion in a home environment. In the business environment, it probably needs to be a little more formal than that. There's a thing called a Security Operations Center, or SEAM, which is a security event and incident monitoring, that looks at a wide range of computers, and you've got people staffed in a security operations center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to look for problems and identify those problems and do something with them quickly. So if you're continuously hunting for network intrusions, you're continuously looking for activity on your network, either through a security operations center, and we can provide that for businesses, or it's just as a home user looking at the things that might be happening on your computer that indicate that you've been hacked or that you've got a network intrusion. That's number 6. Continuously hunt for network intrusions. Number 7 is leverage the modern hardware security features. I talked earlier about people who have Windows 7 machines. Well, Windows 10, Windows 11 uses a thing called the Trusted Platform Module, or TPM, and the UEFI boot. These are secure things that are integral to the hardware that allow you to have better security by keeping the bad guys from reading what you're doing, putting information on your disk. It's a little complex. If you have Windows, you're probably leveraging that. But if you're doing any development for yourself or you're buying software, that's one of the things that you need to pay attention to, is that it's utilizing the hardware's advantages that we have in modern computers. So upgrade your operating system. If you have Windows 7, for the love of Pete, please get off of Windows 7. Please, do me a favor. It's not that expensive. Number 8 is segregate networks and use application sensitive segregation. And what that means is that if you have a network, segregate the network so that different value systems are on different segments of the network, or segments that are exposed to the internet are segregated from other ones that are exposed to the internet in a different way on a different network. And the example that I use here is your Internet of Things devices, your smart televisions, your Alexas, your Ring doorbells. You probably don't want those things that might be easily hacked, that are hard to put antivirus on, that are hard to put a firewall on the same network as your computer that you do your taxes on or that you access your bank with. If you segment the network, and here's a video about that, if you segment your network, then if somebody hacks one device, they can't move laterally. It's called lateral movement. They can't move laterally in the network and infect the other things in the network that are more valuable to you. So segment the network, and application-aware segmenting is even better. Number 9, integrate reputation protection services. Now, what is a reputation protection service? Well, in the old days, it was pretty easy to identify malware or adware or things that people wanted to put on your computer by signature. There would be a signature file in your antivirus that would look at the signature of the threat, and the security vendors would go out and find new threats, and they'd put a signature in, and your antivirus would update, sometimes twice a day, to update those signatures. As threat actors have gotten more savvy about how to do this, they obscure what the software is doing, or they're putting out so many different variations of the software that the signature is a little bit harder to detect. So signature-based detection is not nearly as good as it used to be. If you use reputation services or leverage reputation services, for example, with a network firewall, here's a discussion about network firewalls, the network has a protection algorithm so that the firewall at the boundary knows the reputation of different websites and domains and places that your computer might want to go. And so it will say, you know what, you probably don't want to connect to a computer in Russia if you're editing your photographs, or North Korea or Iran, or a wide variety of places that are doing nefarious things on a computer. So the reputation of the place that you're connecting to is integral to the system of protections that you have for cybersecurity risk mitigation. Finally, transition to multi-factor authentication. We've all experienced multi-factor authentication. Probably the first place you experienced it was with your bank. When you went to log into your bank would send you an SMS message on your phone so that you couldn't log in if you couldn't get to that SMS message. That's called multi-factor authentication. Here's a video on that, a little more in depth. Multi-factor authentication means that if somebody steals your password, it makes it harder, not impossible, but harder for them to access your account. So if you can use multi-factor authentication on any internet resource, implement multi-factor authentication. Yes, it's sometimes painful, however, it is worth the time and effort, especially with the spate we've had for our clients with business email compromise. We've had folks that weren't using multi-factor authentication because they didn't want to be bothered with it. They get their emails hacked and caused impacts to their business in terms of how long it took them to get back up, and even some problems with their vendors. And we'll talk about multi-factor authentication in a later video. So that's the National Security Agency Top 10 Mitigations for Cybersecurity Risk. Two things that are very important to understand. First of all, the NSA is real good at hacking into computers, so their advice about how to keep from getting hacked is probably pretty good. And the second thing is that they're called cybersecurity mitigation strategies. That doesn't make anything cybersecurity proof, which is why you need to constantly monitor and constantly look at and constantly examine what's going on with your computer to help you, if you do have a problem, to recover from that problem and move forward. If you need help with that, contact us at Nerds to Go and McKinney, and we can talk about it with you, especially if you have a small business. If you find this information helpful, hit the subscribe button below, mash the notification bell, share it with your friends, and we'll talk again soon.